We're going to start with Peru, and with a painter ball. So I don't know if he's very well known in the community. He does a lot of work. He's an artist. He's based in Collegedale. His name is Alex, and Alex, it's all you.
Well, hi. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me and letting me be part of this. Well, yes, I was born in Peru and moved to the States in December '89. So it's been a few winters ago, right? And from in New Jersey, I kind of like developed my passion for art. I grew up in an artistic family. My grandparents were very artistic, but since I was so little, I think I didn't see the value of it until I was in high school. And it was funny because I took this class just as a class, and one Monday, my teacher says, "Hey, here's your medal, you won." I'm like, "What did I win?" You know? And she's like, "Oh, I submitted one of your landscape paintings to a competition, and you won second place." I was like, "Oh, okay." I didn't know that, you know. So after that, she told me, "Why don't you pursue this career? It looks like this is you." And I still didn't see quite much the value of it again. And I went to college for, I even forgot what I went for. To be a social worker. There you go. I like to work with the youth, and so yeah, I went to college in Michigan to be a social worker, and I had to take an elective class, which was an art class again. And in that class, it didn't go too well. I didn't know the difference between fine arts and graphic arts. That was like back in '96 or so. And, but yeah, so when the advisor said, "Oh, so which one do you want?" I said, "Oh, I'll take the first one." And it was graphic arts. Okay? So I go into the classroom, and I'm expecting to see maybe still lifes or draw from models, right? And it was just to draw logos and do all this stuff, and I was like, what's going on? So it looked like I was doing so bad. Then the second day of class, my professor said, "Why don't you split this class? It looks like you're wasting your time here." And I was like, "Oh, okay, thank you." And then he said, "Plus, it looks like you're not doing much for this." And I took his word, and I just dropped the class. Then years passed by, and in college, I had, I had a suite mate, which means like we shared the same bathroom, So I opened the door to use the bathroom, and his side of the door was open. Yeah, his side of the door was open, and he's painting. And I was like, "Oh, there we go, another one that might drop out probably in a few months." It looks like I was thinking out loud that he heard me. So he turns around, he's like, "Hey, what's up?" And I was like, "Yeah, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Aren't you studying like any other serious career?" And he's like, "Well, I'm a serious painter, And he actually came from Mexico, from Nuevo León, Mexico. So he was in school doing his master's in art, actually getting his portfolio ready because he was trying to go to Notre Dame University. And I didn't know this. So that's how our friendship began. He was offered to paint a mural in Michigan, and he asked me if I wanted to go and help out. I said, "Sure, why not? It's just painting, right?" That's what I was thinking. And then he starts asking me to start mixing colors for him. And I start mixing. Then he's like, "Why don't you paint on this side of the wall?" I said, "Oh, sure, I'll do that." I didn't know that was his technique of trying to get me into the arts and see the value of it, right? So a week passes by, and he's like, you know, it looks like you have a nice brush handling. I'm like, well, nice brush handling? What is that? And well, now I do understand that, right? But back then I was like, this guy's just saying all this stuff. And so yeah, we work on that mural. And as the time was passing, I felt like this brush became like an extension of my arm. And now I felt like I wanted to do more. And I would ask him, do you have another mural? He's like, oh, why? You know, so I said, you know, let's start looking for murals. Let's start looking for walls to paint. And he said, no, you need to ask for permission first. You know, so, so to make the story short, I went to the art department to speak to the dean. And I said, hey, I would like to take an art class. And he said, didn't you just quit like 2 semesters ago? And I was like, yeah, but that was just a class. I wasn't like majoring in art. Now I want to major in this career. And he said, okay, sure, but all classes are full. We only have one class, and it's the advanced drawing class. If you can get something for that class, then, and if you speak to the professor and he lets you in, then let's see what happens. So I go and talk to the professor, and the first thing he asked, it was for my portfolio. Right? And I was like, and what's a portfolio? What is it? You know, how is that? How do you make that? And he's like, well, you need to have a body of work, you know, that I can see. And I was like, well, no, I don't have that. And he's like, so why are you here? I'm like, the dean said that this is the only class open that you have, like, it was open for 2 more students. And I'm like, so you might, if you take me. You know? So I told him my story about what happened, the experience that I had at the graphic design classroom. And it looked like he saw his story reflected in me, because he told me that he experienced the same. He's from South Korea, and he experienced kind of a similar story. So he said, you know what, we'll do this. I'll give you 2 weeks, because you know in 2 weeks you can always drop out and you get your full refund. So he said, I'm going to be nice with you. I'll give you 2 weeks since you don't have a portfolio. I have no idea where your skills at in drawing. So I'll give you 2 weeks. If I see potential, you'll stay for the semester. If I see that you are really not going anywhere, maybe during the first week I'll let you know. You know? So I said, okay. I'm like, that's a deal. I'm not going to waste any money. Right? So the first week passed by, I didn't hear any bad news. So I was like, okay, I still have 1 more week. The next week passed by, and he's like, well, welcome to the class. You're welcome to stay. But then he says, but there's a lot that you need to learn. I see potential, but there's a lot. Okay? And there was a lot. There was. Like, one of the things was I used to get too close to my canvas, so he gave me like a yardstick, and then he taped my pencil there, and he said, you need to draw from this far. And it's been almost 20 years, and I still do that now. You know? So, yeah, so to make that story short, what happened? Okay, it was 1999, and he tells me, there's nothing else I can teach you here. You know, I like realism, like the classical realism, the European techniques, and he was the only one teaching that back then. So he said, there's nothing else. You already took drawing 1 3 times. You already took drawing 2 3 times. You already took painting 1 4 times. So he's like, there's nothing else I can give you. There's nothing else. So he secretly made an appointment for me to visit Chicago, the American Academy of Art in Chicago, and I had no idea about. So he just said, when you come back after summer break, we're going to go and buy some paints for some project that I'm going to give you next semester. I said, oh yeah, sure. So during that break, I went to Peru to see my family, especially my grandmother, that I was told that she was very ill. And, and this is where, this part of the story is that I relate a lot to a picture upstairs by Henry, I always get his name mixed up, Cartier-Bresson. And it's a little kid that is walking with a portrait. And in that portrait, we just see a female. We don't know if that's the mom or the grandmother, but it touched my, it kind of like brought back memories. And that reminded me of this trip that I did to Peru in '99. Like I mentioned before, I did all these drawings with this professor. Never painted a face before. I drew a little bit, but never painted. So I go to Peru with a canvas, some brushes, and oil paints, not knowing which colors I need to mix skin color, but the idea was I have to go and paint my grandmother. Okay, so I go over there, and we spent almost a whole month, just talking about childhood memories. I grew up with her, and my mom and my grandfather, and just we were catching up. Although we were always speak over the phone, it was nice just to catch up in person and face to face. So one day, I decided, you know what? Can I do a painting of you? Now, in the back of my head, I was thinking, if you mess this one up, because you've never done a portrait, it's going to be tough, So she said, yeah, sure, why not? So she sat for me for maybe 6 hours, and during those 6 hours, we spoke and spoke. I painted a little, and we paused so many times and shared and laughed. And after 6 hours, I did this painting. I won't show you yet. I did a painting of her, and that when it was my time to come back to the States to go back to school, I had my luggage and this painting under my arm, not trying to let it go, because now for me this painting was, well, it was, let's say, sad and happy at the same time. Sad because I knew this was the last time I was going to see her, probably, right? Because she was very ill. And happy because I was thinking, she's my first portrait, So this is her, back in '99. There's a lot of things that now that I see it, that I can change to make it look more realistic. But this painting always hangs in my studio as a reminder of where I was, who was my first portrait and my inspiration since childhood. And yeah, so this is her back in '99, I'm sorry, 10 years after I came to the States. And yeah. So yeah, that's one of the memories that picture brought back to me. Another memory that brought back was their family, their wedding portrait that they had in the living room. I would always stop and look at it, and what would call my attention a lot was that I would see my grandfather once in a while pass by, and he would stop and look at their wedding portrait, and he'll pull maybe like a handkerchief and just dust off some of the, dust from the frame. Or then I would see my grandmother also. She would pass by, she would stop on it, and she would like clean the glass. Once in a while, I would catch them trying to find each other after looking at this picture. Like he would turn, trying to like cross, eyes with her, and just share a smile. So that's the picture. Well, there is a copy of it. I think it's in your program. So that picture upstairs reminded me of this. My experience, my childhood in Peru, and seeing the love that my grandparents had for each other, for their kids, for their grandkids, and especially having the opportunity to do a portrait of her. It was really a moving experience for me and very inspiring, because after that, I told myself, I think I want to be a portrait painter. And the reason why is because now when I paint portraits, I just don't want to paint the person's likeness, because anybody that studies art maybe can do that. They can capture the likeness. But what I like to do with my paintings is like, I like to have conversations with whoever's sitting with me and learn about them, share stories, share a smile, and capture that with my brush on the canvas. And I have noticed that my paintings have, just because it has an emotional side on that, to me it creates more value than what I'm getting paid for to create a portrait. You know. For me, that experience is something that is a moment in time that I have captured that is not going to come back. And all those memories that I have with my sitter is something that I will always remember, you know, and that probably the person that I painted will always remember and will share this with their families, with their future family, and just to see that then the portrait is going to create that impact, especially like when the person passes away and the little ones will look at this portrait, they can try to like get to know that loved one without experience them in person. So yeah, that picture from upstairs, you know, brought all these things to my heart. And are we doing good timing? Okay. Okay. So something that I did a series of paintings last year that I'm displaying, and I decided to add a portrait of my grandparents in this collection. Most of my paintings of that collection is kind of like historical of Peru and the indigenous stories and Incan myths, but I added 3 portraits, and 2 of them is my grandparents. One of my grandfather, from a picture that I remember of him, where he used to be the presidential, one of the presidential guards back in the 1930s. So I remember that he would like once in a while show me his uniform, and he had this picture. So I painted this portrait of him out of memory, what I remember from all the stories that he shared with me. So yeah, so I did a portrait of him wearing his uniform, and the other one of my grandmother back in the 1939, I think, a year after they got married. No, and it was a little small black and white picture that she showed me, so I tried to put the color that I remember of her skin, and yeah, so where am I going with this is that, to me, portraits and pictures, like it says, it has over 1,000 words, right? It tells a lot. But it also is up to the viewer, you know. What do you take from that picture? As an artist, there's always things that I want to communicate with the viewers, but then it's also your experience that plays a big role into the painting, you know, because you come with a different set of eyes, with a different experience, and when you come across a painting, your reaction is way different than probably what I had in mind of sharing. You know, so yeah, I invite you to enjoy the display upstairs. It's beautiful. Every portrait has a story up there. Well, they all have a story. And see if you can relate. You know, see if you can relate with them, and then also see if you can do a little research on a photographer. Like something that I learned about Henry is that he loved painting and drawing, and he used the same composition grid or system that I use for paintings for his pictures. And then after almost 50 years of a professional photographer career, he decided to put the camera down and spend his last years of life as a painter. You know? And that's something that I had no idea until maybe 2 weeks ago when I was researching more about him. So yeah, so enjoy the painting, the photos upstairs, and then research a little bit about them. And there's a lot that we can learn from those artists upstairs. Well, thank you so much.